In the year 2000, video games looked like this. But now they look like this. I'm Ben, a professional video games environment artist. In over 8 years, I've worked at some of the biggest studios in the world, like Infinity Ward and Codemasters. I want you to join me on an insane journey, ranking over 250 most visually impressive games of the last 25 years, year by year. Okay, here's how we're going to do it. 3 scores. Number 1, artistry. How good is it as a piece of art? How good is it to look at? Number 2, technical excellence. How does the technology elevate the art? And lastly, a score for how the game holds up. This is the true test of an all-time great, right? How far ahead of its years was it? So I'm scoring each of these categories out of 10. That's going to give us a total score of 30 for each game. If the game gets 28 and above, that is an S tier. That is a masterpiece. Full stop. 25 and above is an A tier. That's just a great release for its time. And so on. Hopefully I don't have to give too many C and D tiers, but I don't think I will, because a lot of these games, honestly, they still look pretty good today, I have to say. I was really surprised. And yes, I'm fully aware I'm opening myself up to get obliterated just as much as your favourite games are about to be. But that's the fun of it, so I don't really care. Right, step into my TARDIS and let's do this. Only 250 odd to go. Jesus Christ, what have I done? Oh. The Sims Maxis. So honestly, not many games in history get to claim they created, defined, and pretty much dominated an entire genre, and The Sims is one of those games. It's still up there in the list of best-selling PC games of all time for very good reason. Artistically, the art direction of this game is a toy box brought to life. There's nothing else quite like it. It's so recognisable. It's like someone took how you remember your toys looking at 5 years old, extracted those memories and turned them into a game. It's simple, charming, effortlessly readable, and perfectly supports the gameplay that is required. For a game with pretty much endless variety, given it has about 1 trillion expansion packs, the art is pretty much always cohesive. It's a stylized world that has its own rules, and it sticks to them, and it truly feels like its own living parallel universe where your Sims live as a result, and that's huge for a game like this. It really keeps you invested in the stories that are being told. But with that said, The Sims isn't about the visuals, and that's where it falls short for the time in terms of its graphics, especially for a PC game. But what you did with your toys was never about how the toys looked. The toys were just there to support a story. And that's pretty much what The Sims is. The Sims uses a combination of fully 3D assets and 2D sprites. The characters are 3D and the environments are pre-rendered 2D. It's really simple, and honestly, the two interact with each other really well. The characters can move through the space freely and be viewed from any angle, so they don't have to kind of walk at 90-degree angles everywhere. But the world can only be viewed from 4 angles as a result of being sprite art. It's a clever solution to overcome hardware limitations of the time, honestly, and the hand-authored sprite work is great, as are the customizable Sims, but even for the time, overall everything is pretty flat looking as a result. So, for artistry, I'm giving The Sims a 7.5 out of 10. Technically, well, we've got nothing too special going on here. We've got sprite art, which is well within the realms of the tech of the day. It more relies on the talent of the artist to author these sprites, and I'm assuming that they probably used 3D models as a base and then painted over those and kept everything consistent that way. We've mixed that in with some 3D character work and rudimentary fake lighting. There's not much else to say really. Middle of the road, I'm going to give it 5 out of 10 here. As for it holding up, well, there's no doubt this game is dated, right? But weirdly, I think it's aged pretty well. Other games that don't go for realism or push the boundaries hold it way better, I think, but still, I'd be happy to play this today, honestly. 8.5 out of 10. So that's 21 out of 30 for The Sims, and that's putting it in C tier. And honestly, for an outstanding genre-defining game whose visuals are just there to support its gameplay, it's The visuals do just enough to make you feel like these characters are real and their stories are unfolding in a parallel universe, and that's all you need. Vagrant Story. Square. So, let me put this into perspective quickly. The hardware of the time is kind of nuts when you think about it and actually look into what these developers had to do and what they had to work with. The PlayStation 1 had 2 megabytes of RAM and 1 megabyte of VRAM, and the cherry on top, a 33 megahertz CPU. Today, some toasters are literally more powerful than the hardware these developers had to work with. And yet, just look at what Square achieved here with Vagrant Story. This game is an underrated visual masterpiece, not just for the year 2000, but full stop, in my opinion. This game was a true swan song for the original PlayStation, and what a swan song it is. It's the definition of overall visual cohesion, strong art direction, and genius developer technique trumping everything else. It's not about throwing raw graphical horsepower at it, it's just about good, solid development. Akihiko Yoshida's gothic, painterly art direction is the defining element of this complete gem. And in an era where pretty much everything in terms of lighting was smoke and mirrors and underhand trickery, Vagrant Story pulls off a dark, desaturated world with dramatic lighting that's far ahead of its time. In this era of games, lighting was really rudimentary, and often games like this became muddy and unreadable and aged really badly due to the limitations of the time. And it's incredible that they've pulled this off with all the trickery that they had to do. And its artistic brilliance doesn't stop there. The character designs are like elegant, expressive paper puppets brought to life, and they read cleanly, even at the low resolution that this game had to run at on the PlayStation 1. It's a testament to what cleverly designed and perfectly executed art could achieve against all technical odds. For artistry, this is one of the easiest 10s I'm ever going to give. Technically though, Vagrant Story is equally brilliant. The fact that this game fits into the memory of a PS1 is pure voodoo magic, and I don't know how they did it. It's a limitation the developers had to fight at every step of the way as well. This is honestly a tighter fit than trying to put on your prom suit a decade later. It's nuts. The modelling teams even had to be extremely selective with where they use their geometry, focusing it where it mattered most, which honestly is a practice that has been lost today. And things like that is why memory and disk size and download sizes have ballooned on modern games. People no longer think like this. It's just properly smart development that, in the end, it doesn't compromise the art. Lighting wise, they use vertex colors and cleverly sort of duplicated and inverted models to create awesome rim lighting on characters. This is really good technical artistry. But with that said, this game isn't a true boundary pusher compared to others in this year, but it's still getting a 9 out of 10 from me. As for how Vagrant Story holds up, this is where it gets even more wholesome. The PlayStation 1 always struggled with resolution and flickering, but Vagrant Story's art style in many ways actually benefits from and works with this limitation. And that's really something to be admired, because they wouldn't have known about this back then. This is just great artistry. As it's aged, Vagrant Story has matured from what was intended to be sort of a realistic game into an almost perfect pixel art style game. The world is dynamic and interactive, the assets are wonderfully authored and textured. Its camera work feels modern, which is huge for the day, and even the UI holds up reasonably well. 10 out of 10. 29 out of 30 for Vagrant Story. What an underrated masterpiece. Spyro, Year of the Dragon, Insomniac Games. Now look, a list for the year 2000 wouldn't be worth the pixels it's made from without including Spyro. Everyone's favourite purple dragon, including mine. And he's everyone's favourite purple dragon for a reason. Spyro's art direction is unmistakable. Even the more modern Spyro releases, you can see it's never forgotten its roots. And that's a sign of great art direction. Its cohesive colour scripting, stylization, and relentless charm have been a staple of Spyro games forever. The animations in this game are great, from flying to swimming to coming to a screeching stylized halt. Spyro's full of bounce and life, and that's amazing for games in the 2000s. There wasn't much memory for these guys to work with, so the animators had to really nail it. That said, it does fall short in cohesion in some areas, particularly in the characters, and in places the environments too. Spyro as the hero character is outstanding, but the supporting characters can sometimes be a little goofy and slightly compromised visually. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Insomniac is still renowned to this day for their technical prowess and leveraging technology to support both art visually and in terms of performance. In the year 2000, though, Insomniac was still doing what they do today. The worlds in this game stream seamlessly with no loading areas really beyond the portals, which they keep you in the moment anyway. The variety of both art in terms of characters and environments is something to be applauded too. But with that said, there are other games in this list, like Vagrant Story, that have more technical wizardry supporting their art, so I'm going for a 7 out of 10 here for Spyro. As for how our purple friend holds up, Spyro's art direction is never in question, it's wonderful. However, its technical execution and consistency in this particular game is. Some of the environments look wonderful, with seams covered up by great texture work and wonderful material cohesion and backdrops and colour choice, whilst others, they fall a bit short of the high standards those levels set, and the characters, whilst they are all charming and funny, they are a bit inconsistent in quality too, but this game is far from a disaster, it's still great. 7 out of 10. So, 23 out of 30 for Spyro. B tier. Perfect Dark. Rare. So, this game pretty much breaks the Geneva Conventions with what it does to the Nintendo 64. Like, even to an inanimate object, why would you do this to something? Perfect Dark is, in context, one of the most ambitious shooters ever, and a showcase of what the Nintendo 64 was capable of if you literally tortured it and put it in a waterboarding center and pushed it to its breaking point. Rare pulled out all the stops to make this game even possible, and the fact it runs is a miracle and a testament to their skill with the hardware. You see, Perfect Dark to me is a weird one. At its best, it's great, but at its worst, it's really not. It's a game that probably was made a couple years too early. Its overambition is its greatest strength, but it's also its greatest weakness. In terms of raw visual fidelity for the Nintendo 64, Perfect Dark is definitely up there. However, on an art direction level, I think it's a bit confused and it's very inconsistent in my opinion. If you handed Perfect Dark to someone today and asked them to play this, I think their reaction would be along the lines of the guy from the Blink 182 music video. You'd be like, what the fuck? Some of the sci-fi and cave aspects hold up really well and have great visual identity and cohesion, but the rest of it, not so much. There's some genuinely cool stuff going on here though. The lighting is great for the Nintendo 64. There's also seamless blending between areas like the cave walls and the ground, something which games even in 2025 struggle to execute sometimes in terms of seams and intersections. And in general, there's a lot of great texture work. In an era where games often just accepted stretching and texture seams as the norm, Perfect Dark makes an effort to hide them. Some of the character faces and animations are actually seriously good as well, considering the time and the hardware. I'm going 8 out of 10 here. On a tech level, this game is a marvel for the hardware. There's massive levels, some even with multiple floors, and that's without loading. There's elements of dynamic lighting, there's lens flares, there's an abundance of particle effects, and even some rudimentary reflections. And the high enemy counts make the world feel alive. And to push that on the Nintendo 64, I don't know how they did it. No answers for you. Maybe one of the Rare guys can let me know. And there's even motion capture being used, something which, for this time, I didn't even know that existed. However, all of this does come at a cost, because in terms of holding up, Perfect Dark is famous, or infamous, for its frame rate dips at the time. And I suppose that could be considered holding up in today's games, to be fair, but there's often severe texture flickering and artifacting too, which is a real deal breaker for me. Character faces are good, but the rest of the character art, not so much. The proportions and stuff, they're a bit weird and kind of Slenderman-like, which freaks me out. I'm going to have to go 5 out of 10 here for Perfect Dark. I think if it was made a couple years later, wow, we could have been onto a masterpiece here. Who knows? But that means Perfect Dark gets 23 out of 30. So, really good job. B tier. The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask, Nintendo. Oh god. Here we go. As far as Legends go, this is as mythical as they come, right? If there's a Mount Rushmore of games, this one's probably up there. Nintendo dared to do what no one else was doing at the time, and in doing so they created this masterpiece in just 1 year. With that said, Majora's Mask isn't one of the best looking games on the surface. Compared to other games on this list, its raw visuals are a bit simplistic and crude. I mean, it's a Nintendo 64 title, and to be fair, it's one of the best looking Nintendo 64 titles. And it's competing against much more powerful and more modern hardware in this era. It's almost unfair that it is here, but it's a testament to Nintendo's skill that it is. But that isn't why this game is here. Majora's Mask's artistry is in its tone and mood, and for all its crude assets, it's cohesive and portrays a dark, surreal, and some would even say unsettling world in the best way possible. To do that in this era, with those visuals, that requires an enormous amount of artistic skill, and I've got to give it its dues out of sheer respect for what Nintendo have pulled off here. 8.5 out of 10. Technologically, this is where Majora's Mask shines. It pulls off miracles that it has no right to do. The Nintendo 64 is not a powerful console, even by the standards of this era. Yet, Majora's Mask is revolutionary in so many ways. I don't know what black magic Nintendo pulled off here. The world of Termina is streamed near seamlessly on a system with a pitiful amount of memory, even with the expansion pack that Majora's Mask required to run. On top of that, NPCs have a full 72-hour schedule that's considered a feature in 2025 titles, let alone 2000. Its lighting is top tier for the N64. There's dynamic day and night, there's fog, and there's an impressive amount of particles going on as well. All of this on a Nintendo 64 is an unrivaled feat, and it supports the artistry that makes this game special. And again, this was done in a year. 10 out of 10. Unfortunately, being a Nintendo 64 game does hurt Majora's Mask and how it holds up today. Compared to other titles this year and in this list of all the stylized titles here, it's the most dated looking in my opinion. But that doesn't take away from it being a special game in terms of its artistry. 8 out of 10. So Majora's Mask gets a 26.5 out of 30, and that is mightily impressive for who it's up against this year. This is a true David in amongst Goliaths. Diablo II, Blizzard North. Another game that's generally seen as one of the best to ever do it. Diablo 2 isn't the best visually of this year, and that's fine. Some games aren't designed to wow visually, and that doesn't take anything away from them. That said, Diablo 2 is far from ugly. Its gritty, gothic art direction is backed up by really nice pre-rendered backgrounds. It's a dark, fancy epic that is brought to life beautifully. Dynamic, animated sprites breathe life into every frame. However, there is one other game released in 2000 in this genre that does hold it back from getting right to the top marks of the artistry, and I'll leave you to guess what that one is. 8 out of 10 for Diablo 2 here. It's visually solid for the year, but its strength is more in its technical execution than its artistry, in my opinion. Speaking of which, Diablo 2 is so well polished in terms of execution of its art. As far as isometric games go, this game has some of the best dynamism and motion in frame of all games in this list. The sprites and fake shadows and lighting are really nice. The primitive particles, they're super clean and well done. The destruction animations and the death animations of the sprites are top tier, and the fact it's not turn-based and it's truly in motion really works in its favour here. Overall, it's just an extremely polished looking game for its time, but it does get the PC tax. 9 out of 10. As for how it holds up, it's a little muddy in places and lacking visual clarity and readability compared to other games here. For example, Vagrant Story did a much better job with its sort of fake lighting and trickery to remove that issue that these earlier games had. but it's a common issue of the time, so I can't mark it down too harshly. There's some issues with scale compared to other games too, I think, but again, this is minor stuff. 8.5 out of 10. That means Diablo II goes into A tier. Resident Evil, Code Veronica, Capcom. Yeah, I think by this point you're probably realising how utterly stacked the year 2000 was for games. Code Veronica is the game that took Resident Evil into the modern era in fully realised 3D. However, while Code Veronica has some of the best graphics of this year in games, that's only half the story. The art direction and the mood and the atmosphere that's created is a massive part of its artistic success. Honestly, I've been less scared in games with much better raw graphics than this game. Capcom absolutely nailed it here, relying on solid art fundamentals, static and dynamic environmental art storytelling, and pacing to create great horror, not using technology as a crutch to brute force immersion. This game Dead Space before Dead Space was even a thought in someone's mind. And that's not to say the raw visuals and graphics aren't top of the line for this year as well. They are. This game is the best lighting I've seen for a game for the year 2000. There's even some form of ambient occlusion going on here, which is that kind of dark shadowing you're seeing around the assets, which beds everything into the world. And that really makes the worlds and the environments feel so much more immersive. The texture work is sublime and captures detail in low resolution textures like no other game in this list. Everything from Renaissance era like paintings to intricate and woodwork is captured. While the character shadowing isn't great with that kind of little circle going on underneath, the characters are emotive and detailed. 10 out of 10. Tech wise, there's just so much going on with Code Veronica as well. The environments are fully realised 3D as a start, and the game performs extremely well. In cutscenes, Capcom tactically increase the number of polygons they use. Modern games also do this. They have separate cinematic budgets and assets very often. And there's no way that this game falls short other than the fact that it isn't one of the true boundary pushers of the year, considering the hardware it ran on and its fixed angle camera presentation. 9.5 out of 10. This game holds up remarkably well for an attempt at realism, and that's in no small part due to the perfect art direction. The only area that I think this game falls short in is its fixed camera angles. Something that's beginning to feel a bit dated as we're getting to this point, where there are fully realised 3D worlds that you can look around. 9 out of 10. 28.5 out of 30 for Code Veronica. S tier. Baldurs Gate 2. BioWare. Oh boy, here we go. An absolute behemoth of a title, and one of the most iconic RPGs ever. But good news, nerds. In my opinion, this game has the visuals to match. As far as pre-rendered, hand-painted environments go, these might just be some of the best that's ever been created. It's hard to believe that this level of artistry is present in a video game. Some of these environments literally belong in the Louvre, I think. They are just stunning. And it doesn't stop there, because on an art direction level, every aspect of fantasy is consistently captured perfectly in mind-blowing hand-authored detail. Hand-painted backgrounds are best friends with projected, diametric, isometric rendering techniques of the time. And when those backgrounds are executed as perfectly as they are in Baldurs Gate 2, well, it's a recipe for perfection. Lighting is captured well, and the backgrounds aren't just static. The sprite graphics are there to add life where it's needed through the torches and the NPCs. There's even primitive shadow casting from the main characters, and it's balanced to harmonious perfection. The particles and monsters in the world are just the cherry on top. This is just brilliant artistry, and I think it edges Diablo II in terms of that, mainly just because it has more variety of environments. 9.5 out of 10. On the tech side, Baldurs Gate 2 does fall short of some of the revolutionary tech advances of this era, I think, and by virtue of being a PC game, I am judging it a little more harshly. That said, the fact that this game was even made, given the sheer scale of its ambition, is a marvel in itself. The horsepower used to offline render these backgrounds in order to make them possible is crazy for the time. They use multiple Pentium 3 monsters, coupled with a frankly obscene 512 megabytes of memory, and these backgrounds still took 24 hours to render. So I have to give it an 8 out of 10 here. As for how it holds up, well, here's the thing. When art is executed this well, it's essentially timeless. The only area I feel Baldur's Gate 2 falls short is consistency in some places. Some areas, particularly interiors, are much stronger than others. I think the exterior space are a little weaker and a tad noisy and dated feeling compared to the interior spaces, but with that said, 9 out of 10. This is an example of a game that is a masterpiece because of its entire package, not just its visuals alone. 26.5 out of 30, it's going right there in A tier. Skies of Arcadia, Overworks. Skies of Arcadia is a beloved cult classic for a reason. It's not just the fact it's an amazing game, the visuals of this game are just sunshine and rainbows distilled down into pixels. It's bright, idealistic, and fun, and it captures a sense of airiness, space, and scale that is far beyond anything else in this year. The art direction is executed and brought to life exquisitely. Characters are primitively expressive, but they're really well authored, and there's a consensus that this game felt dated on the Dreamcast, but I just can't agree. On pure visual horsepower level, maybe, but as an entire art piece, no chance. 9 out of 10 here. Technologically, there's so much wonderful stuff going on here. We've got the particles and early attempts at brute forcing volumetric effects with the clouds, for example. They're great, and possibly the best clouds I've seen in this year. The movement and motion that this creates in the frame stands out over any other game of this year. The skyboxes are vast and support the gameplay so well, and the draw distance and seamless interiors in a fully 3D world, that needs to be credited too. Really cool stuff. 9.5 out of 10. It just falls short of other games that really push the technological boundaries of this era. As for how this game holds up, I mean, extremely well in my opinion. It's still dated and not quite as timeless as other games on this list in this kind of art style, but it's so fun and vibrant and charming. I love it. 9 out of 10. So Skies of Arcadia just misses out on S tier, 27.5 out of 30, but that doesn't matter. This game has some of my favourite visuals, and it's just a wonderful piece of art. I love it. Final Fantasy IX, Square. Final Fantasy's art is iconic, and in my opinion, it's probably the best pure art piece of this year. This game plays to its strengths in terms of its art. It uses the fixed camera angles brilliantly, and that's something to be applauded. It's almost like a hybrid sort of 3D matte painting technique. As well as this, the characters are beautifully authored in 3D and are undoubtedly the best of this year. The fact that they're visually distinctive from the background works in its favour for the time. It creates contrast in an era where contrast was really difficult to achieve because lighting technology was so limited at the time. Developers relied on primitive vertex-based lighting and lighting detail being baked into textures, so it took real skill to do what they've done here. For artistry, clear 10 out of 10. Technologically, this game is still right up there, honestly. The pre-rendered backgrounds are some of the best to grace the PlayStation, and matching them up to the characters is no small feat. Neither is executing this variety of backgrounds. The only area it falls short is that this is an era where fully realised 3D worlds exist, and this game still largely relies on fixed camera trickery and pre-rendered environments, so I'm going to have to go 8.5 out of 10 here. The art in this game is wonderful, probably the best of this entire year, but the edge artifacting and static nature of the worlds as a result of relying on pre-rendered matte painting style backgrounds in combination with 3D characters, it doesn't age quite as well as the other fully 3D realised stylized games of the era, but with that said, it's still really good. 9 out of 10. So that gets Final Fantasy IX to 27.5 out of 30, just missing out on the S tier. Shenmue, Sega. I don't think there's been a bigger miracle in human history since probably the resurrection of Jesus Christ himself that this runs on a Dreamcast. Just for some context again, the Dreamcast has 0.16% of the PlayStation 5 system memory. It has 0.22% of its memory bandwidth and 0.0014% of its computing power. It's literally 99.99% less powerful. Yet, this game from the turn of the century makes some modern games look silly with how it blesses your eyeballs. In my opinion, Shenmue has some of the most ambitious visuals ever put to screen. It had a budget to match as well. Just under $50 million is absurd for the time. For the inflation nerds, that's $89 million, but my god, does it deliver with those dollars. The visuals are incredible. From the execution of the environments to the texturing of the characters, this game essentially laid the groundwork for the photorealistic genre. It's such a rich rendition of the Japanese suburbs and cities it tries to represent, and it's backed up by fantastic, consistent, raw art. Artistry, it's an easy 10 here for Shenmue, I have to say. The most impressive thing about this game is its fully realised 3D world that makes use of both baked and dynamic lighting, which is critical to its artistic success. Technologically, for the time, this game is just a marvel. I mean, just look at it. 10 out of 10. So, how does it hold up? Well, here's the thing. In my opinion, this game is utterly insane for its time, but it doesn't quite hold up as well as some other games here. You see, the problem with realism is realism tends to age like milk, whereas stylization, it tends to age like wine. But with that said, I can't not put Shenmue in the top tier for this year. 8 out of 10, S tier. Jet Set Radio, smile bit. So let's get this out of the way early. This game isn't just a visual masterpiece, it's a revolution in my opinion. It's going in S tier, but the only question that we need to answer is it a perfect score? It proves beyond doubt that a brave vision and a bold art style, applied consistently and executed perfectly from day one, that trumps raw technological horsepower every single time. Inspired by Tokyo's culture of the time, the iconic, first of its kind, cel-shaded art style was locked in before the game entered production. And it shows, it's perfectly executed. The cel-shaded characters contrast against the environment perfectly. And the environment itself, well, it plays its role of supporting act perfectly. Unbelievably simple geometry is married with consistent hand-authored texture work that, honestly, if it was up-resed a bit, it wouldn't look out of place today. They even hired real graffiti artists to work on the graffiti for this game too, and touches like that are what separate great games from masterpieces. It's that little attention to detail and paying respect to the environment that you're trying to recreate that really sets games like this apart. In terms of the environment, the vehicles are a standout for me. They are just wonderfully textured, and they're so simple geometry-wise. I mean, just look at these bikes. These are completely 2D. They're cards of geometry that have been mashed together with masked textures applied. And tricks like that are what make old games fascinating. They had to overcome so many challenges that we don't have to today. And this period in games truly embodies the idea that has been lost in modern game development, and that is a simple one. Do the most with the least. But even then, this game still pushed the Dreamcast to its limits. The cel-shading alone would give this game a 10 for tech, but the fact it's an open world, that's going into an 11 out of 10 territory, but I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to give it a 10. As for how the game holds up, it's so nearly perfect. I have to be harsh here and knock it down half a point, because I'm not giving 30 out of 30 easily. And honestly, it's through no fault of its own, really. It's just a limitation of open worlds at the time. These open worlds, they had to be really heavily compressed, and when you're basing your open world on Tokyo, which has a lot of hills and stuff like that, when you compress those open worlds down to sort of fit that, you get the slopes that end up being really steep, and that results in the shops and buildings that line the street. They're not even gameplay, but they look really odd when they're floating so high off the ground. Like, they make no sense, but there's also some texture stretching and bad UV work. I can't do it. 9.5 out of 10. 29.5 out of 30 means Jet Set Radio takes it for the year 2000. And I think it's a worthy winner. And I know, you're wondering, if that's not going to get a perfect score, then when am I going to give the first perfect one? I'm going to tell you, it's coming, but I'm not going to tell you when. Maybe it'll be next time. See you in the year 2001. Peace.